Look closely at a human bone, and you will see a rigid calcium matrix built to withstand immense force. But drill past that protective exterior, and you find a highly active, pulsing biological factory. We begin life with up to 300 individual skeletal segments. Through development, many of these segments physically fuse, leaving a definitive adult count of 206 solid bones. This diagram breaks down the internal activity of a single long bone. The marrow housed inside is a massive hematological manufacturing center, producing 98% of the body's red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. By housing these manufacturing centers, the skeletal system functions as a critical biological engine required for survival and immune defense. Osteology, the scientific study of bones, shows that maintaining this matrix requires a continuous heavy supply of dietary calcium and phosphorus. That mineral supply is utilized by 3 microscopic cellular actors that constantly remodel our skeletal frame. Osteoblasts construct new bone, osteoclasts break down old tissue, and osteocytes maintain the living matrix. Navigating the mechanics of the 206-bone adult skeleton starts with a division into 2 distinct functional domains, the axial core and the appendicular extensions. The mathematical split between these 2 domains highlights the balance between internal protection and the requirements of physical movement. This model visualizes the 80-bone axial skeleton, the protective chassis for vital organs. The head accounts for 29 bones, 8 forming the cranial vault, and 14 structuring the face. Inside are 6 ear bones, including the tiny stapes. Downward extends the 26-bone vertebral column. This contiguous column evolved to shield the fragile central nervous system from trauma, while maintaining the flexibility required for movement. Attached to the spine is the thoracic cage, consisting of 25 bones centered around a single flat bone in the chest called the sternum. This diagram maps the cage's mechanics. Pairs 1 through 7 are true ribs, anchoring directly to the sternum to armor the heart. Pairs 8 through 10 are false ribs, sharing an indirect cartilaginous pathway. Finally, pairs 11 and 12 are unattached floating ribs. By leaving the bottom of the cage unanchored, the skeleton allows the diaphragm the mechanical freedom it needs to expand during respiration. The 126 bones of the appendicular skeleton facilitate locomotion and environmental interaction through articulated joints. These limbs connect via anchor nodes, the pectoral girdle at the shoulders and the pelvic girdle at the hips. The forelimb chain starts with the upper arm's humerus, extending into the radius and ulna. Hand bone density multiplies into carpals, metacarpals, and individual phalanges. Over half of the bones in the entire arm are packed into the hand, an evolutionary development maximizing fine motor articulation and tool use. The hind limbs also contain exactly 30 bones per leg, functioning as the body's primary load-bearing locomotive chain designed for heavy impact. At the top sits the femur, the body's largest bone, engineered to absorb shock. Below the kneecap, the lower leg splits the load between the tibia and fibula. The foot architecture mirrors the hand, mapping to tarsals, metatarsals, and phalanges. The hind limb trades precise dexterity for thicker bones and stiffer joints, delivering the absolute stability required to propel the heavy body forward. These vestigial organs serve as evidence of ongoing biological adaptation, showing the anatomical system's history of imperfect change. Specific artifacts like wisdom teeth in the skull or the appendix at the beginning of the large intestine remain physically present in our anatomy today. Human anatomy carries the physical markers of its history, retaining obsolete structures that no longer serve their original survival purpose. When the rigid 80-bone axial core and the dynamic 126-bone appendicular system mathematically lock together, they form the complete 206-bone adult skeleton. This solid framework relies on the connective tension of joints and tendons, actuated by the contractions of voluntary, smooth, and cardiac muscles. Human survival is an emergent property of this specific bifurcated system, providing rigid protection, locomotive stability, and the microscopic hematopoiesis required to sustain life.